Hi, my name is Gail. I have a husband and 2 grown children. I want to first thank your teacher for inviting me to be here today to speak in your school. And as she said earlier, if I say anything that's disturbing at all and you need to take a break from the room, then feel free to do that. You have an index card on your desk, and that's for writing down any questions as we go along. So what I want to start with is to show you guys 10 pictures, and I want you to tell me who these 10 people are. So who's that?
Michael Phelps.
Michael Phelps? Yeah? Yeah? Ellen? Who's that? Yeah, she wrote Harry Potter, J.K. Yep. Rock? Lady Gaga? Alicia Keys? And Logic. Okay. So, what do they all have in common? They're all famous, but I heard somebody say it. Yeah. So, all of them have struggled with anxiety or depression. Okay, so all of them have struggled with it. Some of them try to hurt themselves. Some of them try to use drugs or alcohol to fix their depression. But the fact is they all found positive ways to treat their depression, and they're all still here. With the exception of the 2 historical figures, they're all still here. And the reason I show you guys those 10 pictures is to say, if someone in the public eye can ask for help, then so can we. And that's the message for today, is to ask for help. If you only remember one slide from today, this is the one I want you guys to remember, is to ask for help. I'm here today not as a doctor, not as a counselor. I'm here today as what they call a suicide loss survivor. A suicide loss survivor is someone who's lost someone close to them by suicide. And in my family, we've actually lost 4 people. I lost 3 of my cousins to suicide. They lived in another state. I really didn't know them. And when they died, we actually didn't even talk about it. And if you see a pattern in your family with any illness, whether that's heart disease, whether that's diabetes, whether that's alcoholism, whether that's depression, you should be studying those illnesses and learning as much as you can about them. But we didn't do that. We stayed pretty much in denial and didn't talk. And that was a really big mistake, because then on January 4th of 2010, I lost somebody close to me by suicide, and that was my brother, Glenn. And even though it's been many years, this part of my story is still difficult to share, and so I'm going to ask for help, and I have your teacher read a story about my brother to you.
I lost my brother Glenn to suicide. Glenn loved to ski, and he was also a great fly fisherman. He lived life to the fullest, and that always made me glad. Glenn was a risk taker and impulsive, but he was also a very sensitive person. He moved to Oregon, and rarely he came home to visit. When he did, he had a smile on his face and didn't share the struggles in his life. When he and his wife divorced, he wasn't seeing his children every day, and this was a major life change for him. Then he lost his business in the Great Recession. He equated self-worth with net worth. This is not the truth. The world may tell you this, that how much money you make is what you're worth. How much money you make has nothing to do with your value. We don't know all of the pieces. Depression is complex. There were things going on inside his mind that he didn't share with anyone. The brain can get sick just like any other organ of the body can get sick. If your heart was sick, you would do something about it. The same is true for your brain. In his last 2 days, the people of his town of Hood River, Oregon, said his head was down and he was giving back items he had borrowed. He was showing some warning signs, as do most people who die by suicide, but not enough for anyone to connect the dots. When he took his life, his pain spread over all of the family, including his 4 children. To know that he was in that much pain, even to leave his young children, our hearts broken in a way none of us had ever expected.
So Glenn never told anybody. He didn't tell my parents, he didn't tell his siblings, he didn't tell his best friend. And when we were growing up, my generation was taught that depression was something you brought on yourself, and you were supposed to figure it out for yourself. So that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to figure it out for himself. We were taught that it was a weakness and a character flaw. And that's nobody's fault. We hadn't studied the brain, and we didn't know the truth about depression. So now we know the truth, and that's why I come into classrooms. I'm a volunteer and not paid to come in here, but we come into classrooms because we want to help and just reach one person if we can. So, what is the truth about depression? Depression is a medical illness that is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. These chemical imbalances are visible to researchers in images taken of the brain. So, if you were to Google MRI Mayo Clinic depression, the slide that would come up on your computer is this one. So the brain on the left is darker, it's not moving forward or learning new things, And then the one on the right is the brain that is moving forward and active and learning, okay? So this is a really important slide to show to your parents because it shows them that there's an actual chemical change that takes place and it's visible in the brain on an MRI. This is the time you guys want to be learning about depression. 75% of all mental illness, chronic mental illness happens before age 24, okay? So now is the time that you want to be learning about it. And the reason for that is that you're going through a lot of changes in your physical body, and you're also going through a lot of transitions in your life. So that's why this is the time to be learning. What are some facts about depression? Something bad or stressful doesn't have to happen for depression to occur. Depression can arise over a period of time. 20% of Americans in a given year will experience a mental illness, and depression is the most common. 20% of teens have or will have a serious mental illness, and depression, again, is the most common. So if there's 30 of you in the room, 6 of you right now might be experiencing some level of depression. Depression affects people of all ages, cultures, ethnic, religious, and economic backgrounds. What are some of the signs and symptoms of depression? Loss of interest in things that used to be fun or isolating. Now that's listed first because that's the first thing that really starts to happen. You just start losing interest in things that you used to enjoy. Persistently feeling numb, sad, empty, or crying easily. Difficulty concentrating or remembering things or making decisions. Feeling hopeless, helpless, worthless, or guilty. Feeling angry, irritable, moody, fighting, or arguing. So when I started learning about depression, this is the one that surprised me. I didn't know that a lot of people express their depression through anger. And that's particularly common in men and in young men. Often feeling anxious, worried, or having panic attacks, sleeping more or less than usual, eating more or less than usual. Loss of energy, tired all the time, recurring headaches, backaches, or stomach aches, so it can start to move to other parts of your body. Avoiding friends or feeling alone even when you are with your friends. Using alcohol or drugs to escape or hide your feelings, acting impulsively or recklessly, feeling trapped. And then these last 3, thinking about suicide, talking about suicide, or planning suicide. Those are the symptoms that you want to act on right away, that you want to take some action. And we also say to watch for extreme calm. So if you have a friend who's been struggling for quite some time and all of a sudden they're really, really calm, it could be that they're actually planning suicide. So that can be a warning sign to watch out for. So other than the last 3 that you need to act on right away, if you have 5 or more of these other symptoms for more than 2 weeks, then that's when you want to find out if this is more than just being sad, if this is the start of a depression. And that's why that's in red. That's your red flag to go find out. So when I lost my brother, I wasn't doing okay. A loss by suicide is different than the other deaths. There's even more what ifs. What if we'd asked this? What if we'd seen this? Why didn't he trust us? And I had all those thoughts going over and over and over in my mind, and not just in the day. It started happening at night, so then I wasn't sleeping. Then I wasn't eating. Then I was crying all the time. So I was starting to go into my own depression. And my husband knew about it. We were talking about it. But what I decided to do was to tell 2 more people. And so I picked my pastor and I picked my sister. And I told them everything that was going on. And they stayed alongside and listened to me. But the best thing they actually did for me was to tell me to go see my doctor, because they both knew enough about depression to know that they couldn't help treat it, okay? And that's what I want to say to you guys too. If you have a friend who's been struggling, to come alongside, keep listening to them, but then get them to somebody who actually is trained to help them walk through the depression, all right? And so I listened to what they said, and I went to go see my doctor, because your doctor's a great place to start, because you already know your doctor. And I went in and talked to him, and the first thing he said was, I want you to take the PHQ. It's the Personal Health Questionnaire. So who here has taken the PHQ? Yeah, it's pretty common, guys. Yep. It's 9 questions. You answer them and rank them 0 to 3. It talks about these symptoms that we just talked about, and so you try to rank how much they are going on in your life. And right now, this is the best way that we know to diagnose depression. The key with this is that you have to answer it honestly, because if you don't, it's just like a piece of garbage. You might as well throw it away. But if you answer it honestly, that's when you're going to find out if you have depression. So I was diagnosed with a moderate depression. So my doctor and I came up with a whole list of things I was supposed to do every day to get my chemicals back in balance. And you'll see that list a little later. But he said, I want you to do 2 things for sure. Top of the list, he said, I want you to start exercising again. And I said, when you have depression, that's like the last thing you want to do. And he said, I know, but if you can just try to do something. And so he said, the more aerobic, the better, because you get more blood to the brain, and that will change your chemicals more quickly. But anything, he said, is you just get out walking, that's good. So I said I would try, and then the second thing he said was to go and get some counseling. And I said, well, I've never done that before. And he said, I'm a doctor, but I'm actually not trained to help you process the thoughts you just told me about, so you actually have to go to somebody who knows how to do that. So I told him I would try. So I got on the internet and I picked out a person, and I went and I told her everything. And guess what? It didn't work. And I said, well, that didn't work. And I told a friend what I'd done, and she said, you know what, you should try that again. Maybe you should go pick somebody else and try that again. So I said, okay, I'll try. So I got back on the internet and I picked another person and I told her everything. And this time I started to feel better that very first day. I'm not gonna say the first counselor wasn't a good counselor, I think she was. She just wasn't a good fit for me, okay? The second one, we were a good fit. And she started telling me things that were helping me move forward right away. Two things that she told me as a loss survivor was, number one, that I wasn't responsible for his death. And two, that our entire family had done the best we could with the information we were given. So I stopped doing this with my thoughts and started to move forward. So what I want to say about counseling is to seek it. And if it's not working, to seek it again, okay? Try it again. The simple act of talking changes your brain chemistry. And you guys kind of all know that, because when you have a bad day, you go and you tell somebody and you just feel better because you told somebody. That's what counseling is all about, only it's more amplified than that. And to be honest with them and to trust them, because I think if you don't, it won't work. I kind of liken it to, say you thought you had heart disease and you went to your doctor and you said, you know, I think I'm having trouble with my heart, but just kind of look over on this left side of my heart. You know, you don't need to look at the whole thing. And he'd probably, or she would say, you know, your heart looks great. And then you wouldn't be diagnosed, right? And the same is true with this. Like if you just go in and show them part of your brain and you don't tell them everything that's going on, then they won't be able to really help you process those thoughts and move forward. So you have to tell them everything. I learned from my brother not to bottle things up. And that's what I want you guys to learn from him too, not to bottle things up. People experiencing depression do not choose it, but we can choose to get help and recover. For some people, they have clinical depression. This would be a depression that you manage through your life. And that's true of other things that we have in life. If you have diabetes, you have to manage it every day. If you have a thyroid condition, you have to manage it every day. So sometimes you have to manage it every day. And that's the main thing, is to keep managing it and not to bury it. A parent once described it to me as her son shrinking, becoming less of who he once was. And that's what it really felt like to me. It felt like I was becoming less of who I was. When you go to the counselor, they might diagnose anxiety, and that's an important diagnosis because sometimes anxiety can lead to depression. And what anxiety is all that what-if thinking versus what is actually happening right now. So some anxiety is good. It spurs us on to our goals, and it's all good. But if you're mostly living in the future, you know, and doing planning, but actually living more in the future and all those what-ifs, they'll help you to live more in the moment in what is actually happening right now. You may be diagnosed with trying to be perfect in all you do. Excellence is good, but perfectionism is really a form of self-abuse. So we weren't made perfect, and we're not supposed to try to be perfect, okay? And so they'll help you with that. And the words good enough are really important to have for a perfectionist, that you're good enough right now just the way you are. You're good enough. Depression can be very complex. A single event is not the illness, but it can be a tipping point. So when my brother died, so many people asked me, what was it? What was it? Like there was one thing that caused that, caused him to take his life. And that's never the case. It's much more complex than that. Now in my family, we have a genetic component, okay? And you can have depression without having any genetics in your family. But we have that. There are lots of things in your life that are in your control, but there's a whole lot of things that aren't. if you have abuse, if you have divorce, if you have bullying. These are all things, life events. And the key with that is to keep asking for help all along the way so you never reach any kind of tipping point. Seeking help is empowering and it's courageous. So who was the first person that we saw up on the screen today? Who was that first person? Michael Phelps. So Michael even has the word help embedded in his name. I don't know if he knows that. But before the Olympics, I remember listening on TV, and I was hearing like Michael was, getting into drugs and alcohol. And now that I've learned more about depression, I have a lot of compassion. And the first thing I think of is, maybe there's a depression under there. And sure enough, there was. That's what he was going through. And he made a turning point and started to ask for help. And then he went on to win all those medals. So he's a really great role model for us. And if you guys want to learn more about his story, he's a good one to Google to see how he did that and the help that he got. Here's the list of the basics. These were the things that my doctor and I came up with that I was supposed to do every day to get my chemistry back in balance. So the first one is exercising. That's at the top of the list because that was going to have a huge impact on my chemicals. But next is your sleep. Because if your sleep gets off, then a lot of other things in your life start going off. And so sleep is listed, going to bed at the same time each night, and I was to get up at the same time each day. And I was supposed to be turning off my screen time so that my mind was rested for the last hour of the day. And that's important for all of us to try to pull away from that. But we also did talk about the fact that if you're not pulling away from it, what you can do. Night shift, you guys probably all have on your phones that the blue light in your phone goes down later in the night. Or if F-Lux is on your computer, again, the blue light in your computer goes down later in the day. And then if you're not pulling off those things or pulling off TV, it also has blue light in it. There's the UVX glasses. These filter out 98% of blue light. And these are just $10 on Amazon. And what we're talking about with blue light is we're talking about how it affects the melatonin, the hormone that you have that helps you to get to sleep. Blue light is affecting that. So you want to really reduce that later in the day. Eating right becomes more important when you have depression because like junk food actually inflames your brain. And so you have to be even more careful what you eat. And there are lots of foods that are higher in the chemicals that you're low in when you have depression. So serotonin is one of those chemicals. And there's a lot of serotonin in eggs and cheese and turkey and nuts. And so those types of things are better to have in your diet. And then limiting caffeine is important, again, so you get your sleep. Talking to your family and friends is important. And then also volunteering is important. Volunteering gets the focus off of you and onto other people. And that's a helpful thing to do. Taking vitamin D. So they say that everybody in the U.S. needs to get more sunshine. And that's especially true of us here in Minnesota. So they say actually every person should be taking vitamin D. But for us in Minnesota, 30% of people actually have seasonal affective disorder. And that is where we just don't get enough light. So the sun is not out today, and maybe some of you guys notice that, and some of you don't notice it for maybe 3 days before the sun comes out, and you don't really notice it. But if there's 30 of you in the room, 10 of you would benefit from having a blue light. And so many students ask me about it that I bring it into class. And here's what it looks like, and I'm shining it in your face right now, but that's not how you want to use it. You want to treat it like the sun, and you hold it set it aside at arm's length, and it shines on your face for 20 minutes. You want to use it before 3 o'clock, because if you don't, then it actually can keep you up at night. It's got what we call 10,000 lumens. It's a clinically proven blue light. So a lot of blue lights out there give blue lights a bad name because they're not 10,000 lumens, but the ones that are clinically proven. Journaling is important. It's important to journal things that are troubling you, but also things that you're thankful for. Listening to music that uplifts you is important, and then getting a daily dose of laughter. So if you guys are sharing things on Instagram, Snapchat, and all that, keep doing that. Okay, so if you're doing the basics, and if you're doing the counseling and you still don't feel like yourself, you want to go back to the doctor and talk about medication. It's the third step. And with medications, there's 38 antidepressants out there. So you would want to start with the one that somebody else in your family is using because your chemistry is the most similar to theirs. So that's a good starting point. But if no one has taken an antidepressant that in your family, then you would be the trailblazer. The key is to not get stuck, to try the next one or a combination and work with your doctor. What you're looking for is the one that has the most impact for you with the least side effects. Okay? When you're on medication, this is key to know. There is no magic pill for anything in life, and this is no different. So don't expect that medication to do all the work, because it won't. When you're on medication, you want to make sure that you don't mix it with drugs or alcohol. If you think about it, you're working really, really hard to get your chemistry straight. And if you dump other chemicals in there, then you've undone all the hard work that you've done to get your chemistry back. You don't want to go off your medication until your doctor says you can. So you might be feeling better and think that you can pull yourself off, and that's definitely something you don't want to do. You want to work really closely with your doctor on that. So don't try to solve this illness on your own, and don't get stuck. If the first counselor's not working, try another. If the first med's not working, try another. Sometimes I'm able to bring Sarah with me to teach in the classroom. And when she's not with me, she picks 5 slides that she wants to share with you guys. And the first one says, tell someone, write it on a piece of paper and leave it by your parents' pillow. Give a note to an adult you trust. Sarah. So what happened for Sarah was that she struggled for 3 years, and she never got to the point where she could tell someone face to face that she was going through something. And so when she finally did, she wrote it on a piece of paper and left it under her mom's pillow. And that's how she told somebody. And that was her breakthrough day. That's the day she started to get the help that she needs. The reason she's not with me is because she's got a job, she's doing great. So she's not able to be in classroom anymore. But that's what she's trying to say is, like, if you want to write it on a piece of paper and that's how you want to let somebody know, that's okay to do. Now, she had struggled for 3 years. And the earlier you catch something, the better. That's true of any illness, but any time you catch it is good. If you've been struggling for 6 years, it's always treatable, so it's never too late. She wants you to know there are things in this world you're meant to do. So there's a plan for everybody in life, and when you have depression, you're not able to do those things. She wants you to know that you are worthy, and you are not and never will be a burden, all right? So when she had her depression, she actually thought she wasn't worthy to get well. She thought she would be a burden to her family if she told them what was going on. And she wants you to know that those are lies. Those are lies the illness was telling her. And that this is the truth, that you're never a burden and you are always worthy. And that you are not alone. So who's got your back? You have people at your place of worship. You have doctors, parents, social workers, counselors, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, teachers, coaches, friends, siblings, boyfriends, girlfriends. You have a lot of people in your life, but they can't read your mind, okay? So you need to pick a couple of them that you trust and you can talk to. And that's what we're going to do right now. You have permission from your teacher to take out your phones right now. So take out your phones, and if you don't have one, you can still do this exercise in your head. But what we're going to do is have you scroll down through your contact list, and you're going to pick 2 people that you could talk to anytime about anything. So if it's 2 in the morning, you can talk to this person, all right? This is the time to figure them out while you're sitting quietly in health class, all right? So you're going to know who those 2 people are right now at this point in your life. And again, if you don't have a phone, you can think through it. Who are those 2 people? All right. Good. Now I want you to add 2 new numbers into your phone. The first one is one that I want you to label it hello, and the number is 741-741, and this is a texting line, okay? It's a national crisis line. It's a suicide prevention hotline. And certainly, if you have suicidal thoughts, this is a resource for you. But they also want to talk to you if you're trying to process any kind of thought, okay? They want to catch things early. And if you want to talk to somebody, they're there for you, okay? This might be for you, it might be for a friend, or it might be 5 years from now and you're sitting with a friend and they're struggling with some things, and you say, I'm not sure what to do next, but I bet these people know. And then you say, I have this number in my phone, let's text them and find out. So they're trained 24/7 counselors. This is what they do, okay? If you'd rather talk to them versus text, then put the word talk into your phone and then put in the number 1-800-273-8255. And that is just the same trained counselors 24/7, but you can talk to them instead. And this is where Logic comes in, the rap artist. He's so great because he has struggled and he wanted to help everybody in this world. And so he wrote a song with our crisis line as the name of the song. And in the song, it's someone who's struggling, someone who calls a number, and then it shows how they talk to them and help them get to the next step. So that's something that I'm really, really pleased has happened, and Logic's done a really, really great job trying to get the word out that there's always someone there for you guys. Okay, so I wanted to show you some pictures of people in your school that you can go to. And in most schools, the person with the most education is the school social worker. They're very trained in this, in helping you. And so that would be a great person. Also your school nurse, and then also your school counselors. If you are online and you have a friend and they posted something and you're concerned about them, but you don't actually want to talk to them about it, then you can actually go to the help center. Say you saw something on Facebook. Facebook has a help center, and you just report it to them, and what they'll do is reach out to that person for you. And those would be trained counselors, again, reaching out to them to try to help them. So that's one way that you can reach a friend. But if you're able, you can reach your friend directly. And we say that you can ACT, A-C-T, acknowledge, care, and tell. So acknowledge. When they're telling you something, just repeat back to them what they're telling you. So if they say that they're in pain, you say, I see you are in pain. You might be wanting to say something like, it's not so bad, it'll be better tomorrow, but those things actually don't really help them. You want to repeat back what you actually heard, okay, because it's a little more serious than that. So if they're in pain, they're in pain. Care, show that you care by keep listening to them, and then tell. And err on the side of over-concern. So if you're concerned about them at all, then tell their parents or a trusted adult. Text the crisis line, or if you're really concerned for their safety, you still call 911. And then we say, go with them to get help. So it's kind of true with anything in life. Like if you're struggling with something, you want someone to walk alongside you and go with you to get that help. So stick with them and go with them to get that help. You are the one to act. So what we say is, assume you are the only one who's going to reach out to help. It's real easy to say, oh, you know, they must have told a bunch of people about this, or maybe I'm not the one that's supposed to help. Assume that because they're talking to you, you are the one. You are the one to help them and walk with them. If they say to keep this a secret, your friend's life is much more important than keeping a secret. Okay? So this is one time you do not keep a secret. Now, if you care enough about your friend, you care enough to ask the really hard question. And the really hard question is this question: are you thinking about suicide? Now, when I was trained on this, I thought that can't possibly be right, because now you've brought it up and now it's so much worse. But all the research says no, this is actually the right question to ask. First, they'll be relieved that you understand that they're in that much pain that you would ask that. And they're also relieved that you cared enough to ask the hard question. So that is the right question to ask. If they say yes, you say, I want you to live. I'm on your side. Let's find out what's going on. Make sure they know you've got their back. You're going to help them get to that next step. If you think about it, it's their brain that's not well. So they don't know what to do next. They just need you to step in to get them to the next step. So it is a myth that most people who are thinking about taking their lives want to die. The fact is, most do not want to die. They just want the pain to stop. They want to stay here. It's just their brain isn't telling them that next thing to do. So it's also a myth. Once a person decides to complete suicide, there is nothing anyone can do to stop them. The fact is, suicide is the most preventable kind of death, and almost any positive action may save a life. So almost any positive action may save a life. And we underline the word may, because you're still not responsible for your friend, but anything you do can make a difference. I put this slide up because just go away is what people do with depression. That's part of the illness. They will push you away. And that's important to know, because you don't want to take that personally. Know that for many people, that's just part of the illness. That's just part of what they do. So keep reaching out, because you know, they need your help. One way that I reach out to people is with my dog Coda. She's a therapy dog, and she actually goes into hospitals where people have depression. And she's so darn cute. They just look at her and they feel better. Who here has a pet? Yeah, almost everybody. Good. So pets are good for us. Try to keep a pet in your life or be tethered to somebody's pet. All of these belong up on the same chart: asthma, diabetes, depression, heart disease. Depression doesn't belong off on some other chart. It belongs with these. They're all treatable, but they're all life-threatening if you don't do something about them. Your generation is bringing this from darkness into the light. What I mean by this is that you guys are starting to talk about it. Who here thinks they might know someone who might have depression? Yeah, most of your hands are up. And that's good, because that means you're talking about it. In my generation, if I'd asked that in health class, no hands would go up. First of all, we didn't know much about depression, and then if we did, we still wouldn't have raised our hands, okay? So that's good. You're not telling the whole world about what's going on, but you guys are starting to get small support circles around you to help. And there's so much hope in that. A lot of times students will ask me, how can you go into schools and teach on such a sad topic? And I'll say it is a sad topic, but it'd be really sad if he died of something we couldn't do anything about. He died of something that's treatable, and there's so much hope in that. So I want to thank you guys for letting me speak with you today, and if this has helped even one person, then I'm really grateful. Okay? Yeah.